Hi, I'm CourageWCJ, and in today's video we will be talking about Riders of Rohan deck and seeing is this deck worth it. In this deck, the commander is Iwani Shield Maiden. For 2 blue, red and a white, you get a legendary creature, Human Knight, that is a mythic. She has first strike. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if another human entered the battlefield under your control this turn, create 2 2/2 red Human Knight creature tokens with trample and haste. Then if there are 6 or more humans, draw a card and it is a 5/4. When it comes to this deck, it seems to be very obvious on how to play it. The whole point of the deck is to play as many humans as possible to be able to then draw more humans, to then hopefully be able to have enough cards in your hand to then play more humans, and then attack with a large amount of creatures that are humans, that power up other humans, and have trample, so you're able to, even if a load of your tokens or creatures die, there is still damage going through. So this seems to be a really big board state that you're able to attack and then pop 1 or 2 people off and then hopefully have enough to be able to block, where there is some cards that I think they should be in. I know there isn't this card, but there is an uncommon I know that gives +1/+1 in vigilance to tokens, which would have been a really good but kind of somewhat broken card, because if you have a large army of human, you then get to attack and still have blockers. So I do think that would be a really good card for this deck. And when it comes to all these decks, there is also a sub-commander, and that sub-commander is Aragon, King of Gondor. For 1 blue, red and a white, you get a legendary creature, Human Noble, that is a mythic. It has vigilance and lifelink. Whenever Aragon, King of Gondor enters the battlefield, you become the monarch. Whenever Aragon attacks, up to 1 target creature can't block this turn. If you are the monarch, creatures can't block this turn, and he is a 4/4. Personally, I think this commander is better than the original. For 1 less mana, you get a creature with not 1 ability, but 2, and personally, I think both are better than first strike. A better way to draw, even though it will be harder, but if you're making a mass amount of tokens, should be easier to keep. And then an ability where the only downside is that this creature has 1 less power, but overall I think is a better commander out of the 2. So now I'll be going over the main parts of the deck and then overall giving a, is this deck worth it overall to buy? The first thing I'll be going over are the creatures. In this deck there are 31 creatures and 26 of them are humans, where usually when they come with a tribal deck that usually comes out, they're not really actually fully tribal. There's usually a lot of cards. Now don't get me wrong, there is a few spirits and stuff, but it's usually, we'll say, maybe 50-60% of the card type and then the rest not, where this is a high percentage. When it comes to these decks, I'm finding that each year they are kind of making standard decks maybe not better, however they're making it more consistent and actually a better product. But as always, there are some cards that I think are really good when it comes to these decks, and they are Beregond of the Guard, Lossarnarch Captain, Eomer King of Rohan, Faramir Steward of Gondor, Riders of Rohan, Weathered Wayfarer, Fortir Warmonger, Prince Imrahil the Fair. In this deck there are 6 enchantments, but I'm only going to be going over 3 of them. However, there is 1 card, I cannot remember the name from the top of my head, but it's that white token doubler, which I think would go really well in this deck. However, that card, from my knowledge, is over 20 quid, so I know that's probably not in there because of that reason. But the 3 enchantments I do want to talk about are Feltry to the Realm, Oath of Earl, Court of Ear. Now we are on to the sorceries. When it comes to this deck, there are 7 in total, but I only really want to talk about 4. One of the cards in here are really good that personally I think is a game ender in the right circumstances. Can you guess which one that card is? And here they are on screen now. Taunt from the Rampart, Increasing Devotion, Visions of Glory, Sunset Revelry. Next are the artifacts. In this deck there are 12 artifacts, but 7 of them are mana rocks, like your Soul Ring and talismans and stuff like that. However, there were 5 that were not, so I'm just going to go over them 5, and them 5 are Crown of Gondor, Door of Destinies, Vanquisher's Banner, Heirloom's Blade, Herald's Horn, and then next we have the instances of the deck. There is 4 of them in total, however 2 of them are just kind of target exile cards, but the other 2 are quite interesting, so I thought I'll mention them, and they are Unbreakable Formation, Lost to Legend, and then finally we are on to the lands. In this deck there is 38 lands and a few of them are quite good. I do think they are getting better when it comes to the lands. However, I do think they can be better, but depending on the price of the deck, I will see if it's worth it or not. But the lands I do want to mention are lands like Clifftop Retreat, Fury Calm Snarl, Glacial Fortress, Port Town, Pierie Stream, Rogue's Passage, Sulphur Falls. So overall, what are my thoughts on this deck? Personally, I think the sub-commander is a lot better than the commander. However, with the commander, there is kind of two ways to play, even though you will have to change the deck a lot. I do think it would be good to be able to have the commander as kind of a Voltron-y deck, but that's mainly because of the first strike, and then being able to cast 2 humans to power up your commander, and then hopefully get the blockers needed with her second ability. And then I find the sub-commander is really good as just a one type of play. There's probably other ways to play it, but it seems to be a lot harder. When it comes to the cards overall in the deck, I'm happy that there is actually a lot of humans in the deck, and looking over them, a lot of them are really good. My only personal problem is there seems to be a few cards in the deck that give you additional combat phases. Personally, I would rather token doublers or activate or ETB triggers twice, but that's just the way I personally play. If you are into decks that have a large army, this deck seems to actually be one of the better ones in my opinion when it comes to a standard deck that seems to just be make an army and then attack. The second one being the elf one from Kaldheim, and even then this seems to be a better version of it. As always, there's a lot of good cards I think in this deck. There is a few cards that I would personally take out and put in. However, I know with probably the restrictions, they cannot do that. Overall, I think this is a deck that is actually worth it and that people should buy. If you like this video, I have other Is It Worth It videos here. I have a playlist of Is Stuff Worth It here, and then a subscribe button here, which I think everyone should hit. And I will see you all in the next video.